The sound of the heavy envelope hitting the kitchen table was louder than a gunshot in the small, quiet apartment. It landed right next to the store-bought cake, the white frosting looking pathetic under the fluorescent light. My son didn't even blink. He just checked his watch, a piece of Swiss engineering that cost more than my car, and sighed as if he were waiting for a slow elevator. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with the ghosts of 30 years of unpaid bills and skipped meals. I looked at his manicured hands, then at my own, rough and scarred from bleach and steel wool. That envelope was supposed to be the end of us. He didn't know it was actually the beginning of his reckoning. On my 60th birthday, my son threw an envelope of cash in my face and told me to consider it his final gift, that from today on, I was on my own. I just smiled, took the envelope, and then handed him a blue folder I had kept hidden for years. When he opened it and saw the contents, his face lost all color. What was inside would change our lives forever. My name is Sarah. I am 60 years old, and for a long time, I believed I had done everything right as a mother. I raised my son Michael, alone since he was 3, right after my husband left us for a younger woman. I worked 2 jobs for years, cleaning houses during the day and scrubbing office floors at night. My hands became rough, my back ached constantly, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to give Michael a better life than mine. I managed to pay for a good private school, always through sacrifice. There were months when I ate nothing but instant noodles and canned soup just so he could have a steak on his plate. Other times, I wore the same old thrift store clothes while I bought him brand-name sneakers so his classmates wouldn't make fun of him. When Michael got into business school, I sold the only asset I had left, a small plot of land I inherited from my mother. It was everything I owned, my only security for the future. But I thought, why do I need it? My son is my future. Michael graduated with honors and quickly landed an excellent job at a multinational corporation. I was so proud. Finally, all those years of sacrifice had been worth it, or at least that's what I believed. In the first few months after starting work, Michael still came to visit me in our simple apartment in Eastwood. He would bring some groceries, maybe pay a bill or two. But over time, the visits became more and more sporadic. Then, 2 years ago, he met Vanessa. She came from a wealthy family, lived in the gated community of Silver Lake Estates, and clearly did not approve of me. The first time we met, the way she looked at my small, modest apartment, my dated furniture, and my simple clothes said it all. I was an embarrassment, a cleaning lady who didn't fit into the sophisticated world my son now inhabited. After Michael started dating Vanessa, everything changed drastically. The visits stopped almost completely. When I called, he was always busy, always tied up with important meetings. When I insisted, he got irritated, as if my call were a nuisance. 6 months ago, they got married in a lavish ceremony. I went, of course, but I felt completely out of place. Vanessa seated me at the back of the hall, far from her family and the VIP guests. Her wedding dress cost more than I had earned in years of scrubbing floors. After the wedding, Michael practically disappeared from my life. I continued living alone in the same apartment where I raised him, subsisting on the small pension I received after decades of manual labor. It wasn't much, but I got by. What hurt wasn't the lack of money, it was the lack of him. It was knowing that my son, for whom I sacrificed everything, was now ashamed of me. Then came my 60th birthday. I didn't expect anything grand. In fact, I didn't even expect Michael to remember. But, to my surprise, the eve of my birthday, he called. He said he wanted to see me, that he had something important to discuss. My heart filled with hope. Maybe he had realized how distant he had been. Maybe he wanted to reconnect. I tidied up the apartment as best I could. I bought a simple cake from the bakery and even put a clean tablecloth on the kitchen table. When the doorbell rang, my heart raced. I opened the door with a smile, but what I saw froze me. Michael was there, but his face was cold, distant. He didn't even hug me. He just walked in and stood in the living room, as if he were in a hurry to leave. "Hi, Mom," he said without emotion. "Happy birthday." "Michael, it's so good to see you, son. It's been so long," I started, but he cut me off. "Look, I can't stay long. I came here because I need to tell you something important." He reached into the pocket of his expensive suit and pulled out a thick envelope. Without ceremony, he tossed the envelope onto the kitchen table, right in front of the birthday cake I had bought. I looked at the envelope, confused, and then at him. "What is this?" $20,000, he said, crossing his arms. "Consider it your birthday gift, and also a severance package, so to speak." "Severance?" My voice came out trembling. "What are you talking about, Michael?" He sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. "Mom, I'll be blunt. Vanessa and I are building our life together. We have plans, goals, and honestly, we can no longer continue to support you emotionally and financially. You're an adult, you have your pension. It's time for you to go your way and for me to go mine." Each word was like a knife to the chest. I felt my legs give way. "Supporting me? Son, I never asked you for anything. I always took care of myself." "Exactly. So you can keep taking care of yourself." He checked his watch. "That $20,000 will help you for a few months. After that, I really need you to understand. You are no longer part of my life. Vanessa made it very clear that she doesn't want to deal with, well, with this situation." "Situation?" Tears began to burn my eyes. "I am your mother, Michael. I raised you alone. I gave up everything for you. And I thank you for that," he said. But his tone was icy, mechanical. "But now it's time for everyone to move on. I don't want any more visits. I don't want any more calls. I need to focus on my family now, on my wife." He turned to leave, but stopped when I spoke. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Wait." Michael turned, impatient. "What?" I walked to the bedroom, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. For years, I had kept that folder. Part of me hoped I would never have to use it. But another part, the part that was always wiser than I wanted to admit, knew this day might come. I took the navy blue folder from the back of the closet and returned to the living room. Michael looked at me with annoyance. "Mom, I really have to go." "I have a gift for you too," I said, extending the folder to him. "Open it." He took the folder with an air of disdain, as if it were just another sentimental piece of nonsense from a dramatic mother. But when he opened it and his eyes began to scan the documents, I saw the shift. First, confusion, then shock, and then pure terror. "What? What is this?" His voice came out raspy. "They are documents," I said calmly. "Documents that prove that everything you have today, everything you have achieved, was built on a lie." Michael flipped through the papers frantically. His face was growing paler by the second. I watched in silence, feeling a strange mix of pain and satisfaction. Pain because my son had become this person. Satisfaction because, finally, the truth was coming to light. "These documents," I began to explain, my voice surprisingly steady, "prove several important things. First, the company where you work and got your meteoric rise. I know the owner. His name is Richard Sterling. I worked in his house for 15 years, cleaning, cooking, taking care of his children when they were small." Michael looked at me in disbelief. "So what?" "So," I continued, 3 years ago, when you were desperate looking for work after college, I went to see Richard and I begged him. Literally, I begged him on my knees to give you a chance. He owed me favors, many favors. I knew things about his family, things he didn't want coming out, so he agreed. He hired you, not because you were brilliant, but because he owed me." "That's a lie," Michael stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "It's all documented there. Emails, messages, even an audio recording of my conversation with Richard. He confirms everything." I pointed to one of the papers. "And there's more. That promotion you got last year, that huge bonus that allowed you to put the down payment on the luxury apartment where you live with Vanessa, that was also because of me." I saw his hands trembling as he held the papers. I continued, relentless. 6 months before your promotion, Richard came to talk to me. He said he was considering firing you because you weren't delivering the expected results. Your reports were mediocre. You were more worried about impressing the bosses with expensive suits than with actual work, so I made another deal with him." "What deal?" Michael's voice was almost a whisper. I offered to work for free in his house for a year. No salary. In exchange, he would not only keep you in the company, but give you a promotion and a generous bonus. I needed the money, Michael. My pension barely covered the rent. But I accepted, because I thought I was helping my son build his future. I saw a tear fall down his face, but I didn't feel pity, not yet. During that year, I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, receiving nothing. I ate his family's leftovers. I wore old clothes until they fell apart. And do you know what I told myself? It's for Michael. It's so he can have a better life. But do you know what you were doing during that same period, son? He didn't answer. He just looked at me with wide eyes. You were spending that bonus at expensive restaurants with Vanessa. You were buying designer clothes. You were posting photos on social media, flaunting a life of luxury. And when I called you, just asking to talk because I felt lonely, you said you were too busy. Mom, I didn't know, he started, but I raised my hand. There is more. Remember that car you got last year? That luxury SUV Vanessa wanted so much? His face went even paler. Vanessa said it was the company bonus. A lie, I said simply. That same month, Richard called me again. He said you had requested a huge loan, that you had debts because of your lifestyle. The company was considering firing you for financial misconduct. It could affect your reputation and theirs. So, once again, I interfered. No! His voice came out strangled. I sold the last pieces of jewelry I inherited from my mother. They were the only things of value I had left, the only physical memories I had of her. I sold everything and gave the money to Richard to pay off your debts quietly. In exchange, he gifted you that car, saying it was recognition for your exceptional work. Michael collapsed into the chair, the folder still in his shaking hands. He looked at the documents as if they were a death sentence. And about Vanessa, I continued, feeling my voice harden. The woman for whom you are abandoning me. Do you know why her family accepted you? A common employee of a multinational, without a great fortune, without important connections? He shook his head, unable to speak. Because I made friends with their housekeeper. I discovered that Vanessa's father was being blackmailed over an extramarital affair. There were photos, evidence. I got that evidence through contacts I made over the years, working in rich people's homes, and I offered a deal. I would destroy the evidence if he gave his blessing to your marriage and treated you like a worthy son-in-law. He accepted. The expression on Michael's face was one of complete shock. He seemed to have aged 10 years in those few minutes. So, son, I said, my voice becoming firmer, everything you have today, your job, your promotion, your car, your marriage to Vanessa, your luxury apartment, was built by me, not by you. By me, the cleaning lady you are ashamed to call Mom. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, he managed. Why? Why did you do all this? Because I loved you, I replied, and for the first time I felt my voice waver. Because you were my son, and I believed I was doing what was best for you. I believed that if I gave you all the opportunities I never had, you would be happy, that you would be a better person. But I was wrong. The tears were now running freely down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. I let Michael see my pain, my disappointment, my resentment. I raised a monster. I raised someone who values money and status above everything, someone who discards people when they are no longer useful, and the fault is mine. I spoiled you. I protected you too much. I gave you everything without making you work for anything, and now you come here on my birthday to give me $20,000 like it's charity and tell me to get out of your life. Michael was crying now too, his sobs loud and desperate. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this. And if you knew, would it make any difference? I asked, my voice cutting. Would you have treated me better, or would you still be ashamed of the woman who scrubbed toilets to give you a better life? He didn't answer, and that silence said it all. You know, they say you can't pour from an empty cup, but mothers do it every day. We scrape the bottom of the barrel until our fingers bleed just to give a drop more. And sometimes we don't realize that in giving everything, we teach them that taking is all that matters. These documents, I said, pointing to the folder, also include some interesting things about you. Remember that financial report you created that impressed your bosses so much last year? The one that got you that additional raise?" His face went even paler, if that was possible. "I know you committed plagiarism. I found the original report from an intern who was fired shortly after. You stole her work, changed a few details, and presented it as yours. It's all documented here. I have the original files, with creation dates, emails, everything." "Mom, for the love of God!" "And there's more. Those expenses you charged to the company account last year, the trips, the dinners, the networking events, I have proof that at least half were personal. You were taking Vanessa to romantic dinners and billing the company. Technically, that is fraud." Michael was completely devastated now. He covered his head with his hands, rocking back and forth. "So, this is what is going to happen," I said, taking the envelope with the $20,000 and pushing it back toward him. "You are going to take this money. You are going to get out of here, and you are going to think hard about the kind of person you have become." "Mom, please don't do this." "I'm not going to expose you," I said, and I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Not yet. But I am going to keep all these documents very safe, and if you ever need a reminder of where you came from, of who put you where you are, I will be here. Not because I want revenge, but because I still have hope that one day you will wake up and realize what really matters in life." Michael sat there for a long time, head in his hands, sobbing. I watched my son crumble and felt a confusing mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to hug him, comfort him, tell him everything was okay. That was the mother in me, the one who always ran to wipe his tears when he fell at the playground. But another part, the part that had been humiliated and rejected just minutes ago, stood firm. "How did you get all this?" he asked finally, his voice muffled by his hands. "How did you know?" I sat at the kitchen table, across from him. I was tired, not just from the moment, but from years of carrying the weight of secrets I never should have kept. "Michael, you think housekeepers are invisible, don't you? That we are just part of the furniture, no eyes, no ears, no intelligence." My voice held no accusation, just statement of fact. For 30 years, I worked in the homes of the richest and most powerful people in this city. I saw everything. I heard everything. The arguments between couples in the next room while I ironed, the shady business calls while I cleaned the office, the family secrets while I organized their papers. He lifted his face to look at me, eyes red and swollen. "I wasn't stupid, son. I was just poor. And there is a big difference between those two things, even if people like you and Vanessa can't understand it. I was always careful. When I realized you were changing, that you were pulling away, I started to prepare. I documented everything, every favor I asked, every sacrifice I made. Not because I planned to use it against you, but because—" My voice cracked. "Because I was afraid that one day you would forget me completely." "I never forgot you," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You erased me, Michael. You systematically erased me from your life. When your co-workers asked about your family, you said your parents had passed away. I know because Richard's daughter goes to college with Vanessa's cousin, and they talk." He closed his eyes. More tears fell. He didn't deny it. "At your wedding, when Vanessa sat me in the back of the hall, you said nothing. When her mother treated me as if I were just another hired hand for the event, you said nothing. You simply allowed it. You let them humiliate me because it was easier than admitting your mother was a simple cleaner." "Vanessa said it would be better that way," he murmured. "She said your presence, being too visible, could cause embarrassment." "My presence?" I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Son, I gave birth to you. I carried you for 9 months. I went through hours of labor without anesthesia because we didn't have money for a private hospital. I nursed you even when I was bleeding. I raised you alone when your father abandoned us. And now my mere presence is an embarrassment?" He had no answer for that. "Do you know what was most painful?" I continued. "It wasn't even the physical distance. It was realizing that you are ashamed of me, ashamed of the woman who gave up her own life to build yours. I could have married again, you know. After your father left, I had proposals, good, hard-working men who wanted to take care of me, but I always refused, because you were my priority. You were my life's project." Michael looked destroyed. I could see the weight of guilt settling in his eyes, and part of me felt satisfied by it. But another part, the maternal part that never really dies, felt pity for him. "Mom," he said finally, his voice broken. "What can I do? How do I fix this?" It was the question I expected, but one for which I had no simple answer. "I don't know if you can fix it, Michael. I don't know if I can forgive, but I will tell you what happens now." I took the folder back and held it firmly. "You are going to leave here. You are going to go back to your life of luxury, your spoiled wife, your expensive apartment, and you are going to think. You are going to think a lot." "But what about those documents? Are you going to—" "I'm not going to do anything," I interrupted him. "For now, because despite everything, I am still your mother. And mothers have this curse of loving their children, even when they don't deserve it. But that doesn't mean I will allow you to trample on me again." I stood up from the chair, my body aching from exhaustion and emotional tension. "Here are my conditions. You will keep your distance. I don't want your fake calls, your visits driven by guilt or fear. When and if you are ready to have a real conversation, to see me as a person and not ashamed to be hidden, then you can come back." "How long?" "As long as it takes for you to grow up, son. For you to understand that character is not bought with money, that dignity is not measured by designer clothes, that a person's worth is not in their last name or the address where they live." Michael stood up shakily. He seemed to have aged years in that conversation. He took the envelope with the money from the table, but I saw hesitation in his movements. "Mom, I really didn't know anything. About the favors, about the sacrifices. If I had known— But you wouldn't have known the difference, would you?" I looked directly at him. "Because even without knowing the details, you saw my sacrifices. You saw when I ate little so you could eat well. You saw when I wore mended clothes while I bought you expensive shoes. You saw all that, and you simply accepted it as your right, as if I existed only to serve you." He didn't deny it, because he knew it was true. "Go, Michael, and this time, don't come back until you can look at me without feeling shame. Not shame for what you did, but shame for who I am. When you can introduce me to your rich friends and say, 'This is my mother, she was a housekeeper all her life, and she is the strongest woman I know,' then you can come back." He walked to the door slowly, as if every step hurt. In the doorway, he turned one last time. "I love you, Mom." "I know," I replied softly. "And I still love you too. But love isn't enough when respect is missing. Now go." The door closed behind him, and finally, I allowed my legs to give way. I sat on the floor right there, leaning against the wall, and I cried. I cried for the wasted years, for the lost illusions, for the pain of discovering that my son, my only family, had become a stranger. But I also felt something different, something I hadn't experienced in a long time, a strange sense of freedom. For years I had bent, sacrificed, annulled myself in the name of motherhood. Now, for the first time, I had set limits. I had defended my dignity. I had said no. The birthday cake was still on the table, intact, its candles unlit. I got up from the floor, dried my tears, and lit the candles. For the first time in 50 years, I made a wish just for me. I didn't wish for Michael to change. I didn't wish for wealth or an easier life. I wished for strength to rebuild my life, not as someone's mother, but as Sarah, simply Sarah. As I blew out the candles, I felt something inside me shift. Maybe it was the end of a cycle, or maybe it was the beginning of something new. Only time would tell. 3 weeks passed since that night. 3 weeks in which my phone remained silent, no calls from Michael. Part of me hoped he would show up, knock on my door begging for forgiveness. Another part was sure he would simply go on with his life, relieved not to have to keep up the charade of caring about his mother anymore. In those weeks, something in me began to change. I woke up in the morning, and for the first time in decades, I didn't think of Michael first. I didn't wonder if he was eating well, if he was happy, if he needed anything. It was liberating and terrifying at the same time. I started doing things I had never done before. Simple things, but things I always sacrificed in the name of saving money for my son. I went to the movies alone, something Michael always said was sad and pathetic. I bought a new dress, nothing expensive, but pretty, which made me feel good. I even started attending a knitting group at the neighborhood church where I met other women with stories similar to mine. It was there, in the knitting group, that I met Mrs. Gable. She was 70 years old, with completely white hair and a smile that lit up her face. She had also been a housekeeper all her life. She had also raised children alone, and she had also been abandoned by them when they moved up in the world, as she said with irony. "It's always the same story," Mrs. Gable told me while we worked on a quilt together one afternoon. "We kill ourselves working. We give everything for the children, and they grow up believing they deserve all that it's our obligation. And when we are no longer useful, when we get old and tired, they discard us like old clothes." "And how do you deal with that?" I asked, genuinely curious. Mrs. Gable had a serenity I envied. "I learned to build my own life," she replied, her nimble fingers working the needle. "I learned that being a mother is part of who I am, but it is not everything. I am Grace Gable. I am a woman who likes plants, who quilts well, who makes a delicious peach cobbler. I am more than just someone's mother." Her words stayed with me. I was more than Michael's mother. But for so long, I had defined myself only by that role that I didn't even know who Sarah was anymore. It was on one of those afternoons with the group that my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello, Mrs. Sarah?" The voice was female, young, nervous. "Yes, who is speaking?" "My name is Chloe. I work with your son, Michael." My heart raced. "Did something happen? Is he okay?" "He is physically fine," Chloe said, and there was something in her voice that put me on alert. "But I need to talk to you, in person, if possible. It is important." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown the next day. I spent the whole night awake, imagining what this girl could want. Was it a message from Michael? Was he sick? Had something serious happened? When I arrived at the coffee shop, I recognized Chloe immediately. She was sitting in a corner, nervously stirring her coffee. She was young, maybe in her 20s, pretty, with the air of someone carrying a weight too heavy for their shoulders. "Mrs. Sarah." She stood up when she saw me. "It's me." I sat opposite her. "What happened? Is Michael okay?" Chloe took a deep breath. "I didn't know if I should do this. I'd been thinking for weeks, but when I found out about you, well, I thought I had to tell you." "Tell me what?" She looked around, as if making sure no one was listening. "I've been working in Michael's department for 2 years. I was the one who wrote that report, the report he stole and presented as his own." I felt my blood run cold. "You know about that?" "Not only do I know, but I have proof," she said, pulling a folder from her bag. "I have the original files, emails, everything. When I found out what he had done, I was furious, but I was just an intern. No one was going to believe me against an established manager, so I kept the proof, waiting for an opportunity. And now? Now he's doing the same thing again," Chloe said, her eyes flashing with anger. "There is a new intern in the department, Jessica. She is brilliant, works late, does incredible analysis, and Michael is stealing her work too. I already saw him copying files from her computer, modifying them, and presenting them as his own in meetings." I felt my hand grip the coffee cup so hard I thought it might break. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I heard his conversation with Vanessa the other day," Chloe said, lowering her voice. "They were talking about you. Vanessa was laughing, saying it was a relief to get rid of the embarrassing old woman, and Michael agreed. He said it was the best decision he ever made, cutting you out of his life." Each word was a stab wound, but I kept my face neutral. "And there is more," Chloe continued. "They are planning to sue you." "Sue me? Why?" "Vanessa found out about the documents you have. I don't know how, but she knows, and she is convincing Michael to start a legal process against you for, well, her exact words were blackmail and extortion. They say you are using false information to try to get money from him." I laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Of course they are. Why would God forbid my son from having to face the consequences of his actions?" Chloe looked at me with compassion. "Mrs. Sarah, I don't know you, but anyone who works with Michael knows that he is not a good person. He steals others' work, treats subordinates badly, and only got where he is through connections and manipulation. When I found out about you, what you did for him, and saw how he is treating you now," she shook her head, "I couldn't stay silent. What do you want me to do with this information?" "Honestly, I want you to expose him," Chloe said vehemently. "Not just for me or Jessica, but for all the people he hurt along the way. He needs to face consequences, and if you have additional evidence along with what I have, we can make him lose everything." She pushed the folder across the table. I took it, feeling its weight. It was tempting, so tempting. Michael had used me, discarded me, and now planned to sue me. Part of me wanted revenge. I wanted to see my son lose everything, just as I lost everything for him. But another part, the part Mrs. Gable was teaching me to listen to, hesitated. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "I understand," Chloe nodded. "But Mrs. Sarah, don't take too long. The lawsuit they are preparing against you could be filed at any moment, and when that happens, you are going to need to defend yourself." I returned home with Chloe's folder, feeling the weight of an impossible decision on my shoulders. I held in my hands the power to destroy my son completely, not only reveal his past schemes, but also his current ones. With my evidence plus Chloe's, Michael would lose his job, his reputation, possibly even face legal charges. But he was my son. And despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, a part of me still remembered the little boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. It's a strange kind of grief, mourning someone who is still alive. You keep looking for the person they used to be, hoping they're just hiding behind the stranger standing in front of you. That night, sitting in my small kitchen, I spread all the documents on the table, my evidence on one side, Chloe's on the other. It was an arsenal of devastating information, compromising emails, stolen files, documented testimonies, everything I would need to destroy Michael. I picked up my phone, staring at the screen for a long time. I had the contact of a lawyer I met years ago, one of the sons from a house where I worked. He had given me his card, saying that if I ever needed legal help, I just had to call. I could do this. I could call him, hand over everything, and let justice run its course. But my hand shook, not from fear, but from doubt. If I did this, there would be no turning back. It would be the definitive end of my relationship with Michael. I would be choosing justice over my son. I would be choosing my dignity over maternal love. The phone rang, making me jump. It was Mrs. Gable. "Sarah, dear, is everything okay?" Her warm voice filled the line. "You left church in such a hurry today, I got worried." I told her about Chloe, about the new evidence, about the lawsuit Michael was planning against me. I told her everything in a flood of words, my voice breaking at moments. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Then Mrs. Gable said something that changed my perspective. "Sarah, do you know what my biggest mistake was with my children?" "What?" "I always protected them from consequences. Always. When they stole at school, I paid quietly and never allowed them to be punished. When they failed, I blamed the teachers. When they got into trouble, I resolved everything behind the scenes. I thought I was being a good mother, but in reality, I was creating adults who never learned responsibility." Her words resonated with me because I had done exactly the same with Michael. "When my children abandoned me," she continued, "it wasn't out of cruelty. It was because they never learned that actions have consequences. They never learned empathy because I always made everything easy for them. And when I was no longer useful to make their lives easy, when I became a burden instead of a solution, they discarded me. So you think I should? I think you should do what is right, not what is easy," Mrs. Gable said softly. "Your son is hurting other people. He is destroying the careers of innocent young people, and he is planning to hurt you legally. If you don't act now, when will you?" After hanging up, I stared at the documents again. Mrs. Gable was right. This wasn't just about Michael and me anymore. It was about Chloe, about Jessica, about all the other people Michael had hurt and would hurt in the future if no one stopped him. I made a decision, but it wouldn't be impulsive revenge. It would be calculated, fair, and it would give Michael one last chance. The next day, I took all the evidence and went to Richard Sterling's office. The secretary tried to stop me, but I told her it was urgent. Richard, upon seeing me, looked visibly uncomfortable. "Sarah, I need to talk to you, now." My voice left no room for discussion. In his luxurious office, I placed the folders on his desk. "You owe me, Richard. You owe me for years of favors I did without asking for anything in return. Now I am asking for something." He reviewed the documents. His face grew paler and paler. "My God, Sarah, Michael is doing this?" "He is, and he will keep doing it if someone doesn't stop him. You hired him because of me. Now I need you to do the right thing." "What do you want?" "I want you to officially investigate. I want you to do a complete audit of his work. I want you to give the people whose work was stolen the credit they deserve. And I want Michael to face the appropriate consequences within the company." "That will ruin his career, you know." "He is ruining other people's careers," I said firmly. "And if you don't act, I will take this outside the company. I will go to the press, to the regulatory authorities, wherever necessary." Richard sighed heavily. "Okay, I will open an internal investigation. But Sarah, are you sure he is your son?" "Precisely because I love him, I need to let him face the consequences of his actions. It is his only chance to become a better person." The investigation began quietly. Richard was careful but thorough. He called Chloe and Jessica for testimonies. He reviewed all of Michael's work from the last 3 years. He cross-referenced dates and files. And what he found was even worse than I imagined. Michael hadn't just stolen from Chloe and Jessica. He had done it with at least 5 different employees over the years. Some had left the company out of frustration. Others were fired when they complained. Michael had built his entire career on the work of others. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Richard. "Sarah, I need to inform you. We are going to fire Michael tomorrow for cause. The evidence is irrefutable, and more than that, some of the people he harmed are considering legal action." My heart shrank, but I knew it was right. "Thank you, Richard, for doing the right thing." "Sarah, are you sure you don't want me to mention your involvement?" "He will never know it was you who—" "He needs to know," I interrupted. "He needs to know that his actions have consequences, and he needs to know that I am no longer going to protect him when he is wrong." The next day, Michael was called into Richard's office. I wasn't there, but Richard told me later what happened. Michael walked in confident, thinking it would be another promotion. After all, he had just submitted another brilliant report. Richard put all the evidence on the table. The original files, the testimonies, the dates proving the plagiarism. Michael tried to deny it at first, but the proof was undeniable. He went pale, then red with rage, then pale again. "Who did this?" he supposedly asked. "Who turned me in?" And Richard told the truth. "Your mother." Apparently Michael was in shock. He didn't believe I was capable. That I, who always protected him, always cleaned up his messes, would have the courage to expose him. "She handed over documents showing not only what you did here, but also the expense fraud, the previous plagiarism, everything," Richard explained. "And do you know the most ironic part? She could have destroyed you completely weeks ago. She had all this information, but she only acted when she knew you were hurting other innocent people, and even planning to sue her." Michael was fired on the spot. No severance, no references, with a permanent mark on his professional record. Richard also informed him that the company wouldn't sue him criminally if he returned all the improperly received bonuses and signed a confidentiality agreement. But that didn't stop the individual victims from suing him. That night, my phone exploded with messages. First from Michael, a frantic sequence of texts. "How could you do this to me? You destroyed me. I am your son. I will never forgive you for this." Then came Vanessa, even more venomous. "You jealous old hag. You can't stand seeing your son happy. We are going to sue you for everything you have, which isn't anything anyway. You are going to pay for this." I read all the messages in silence. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. They wanted me to feel guilty, to buckle and beg for forgiveness. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. Because for the first time in my life, I had done what was right instead of what was convenient. I had protected the innocent instead of protecting my son from his own actions. And if that meant Michael would never speak to me again, then so be it. The following days were a storm. Michael's story leaked within the company, and as these things usually do, it reached the social circles where he and Vanessa moved. The fall was spectacular. The luxury apartment? It depended on the salary he no longer had. The expensive car? It would be sold to pay debts. The designer clothes? The expensive dinners? The lifestyle Vanessa loved so much, all disappearing. Chloe called me a week after the firing. "Mrs. Sarah, I just wanted to thank you. Jessica and I received credit for our work, and the company is implementing new protocols to prevent this from happening to others." "I'm glad something good came out of this," I said sincerely. "There is something you need to know," Chloe hesitated. "Michael is, well, he is in bad shape. Vanessa broke up with him 3 days after he was fired. Apparently, she wasn't interested in an unemployed husband with no prospects, and her family cut all ties." I felt a pang of pain hearing that, but not surprise. "How do you know that?" "He showed up at the company yesterday trying to talk to Richard. Security had to escort him out. He was disoriented, looking disheveled, very different from the always impeccable Michael we knew." After hanging up, I sat for a long time thinking. Michael was paying the price for his actions, but the cost was high, higher than I had imagined. And despite everything, despite all he did, he was still my son. But Mrs. Gable had taught me something important. Loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences. Sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing them to fall so they can learn to get up. 2 weeks after the firing, my door was assaulted by frantic knocking. When I opened it, there was Michael. But it wasn't the impeccable Michael who had visited me on my birthday. It was a destroyed version of him. Unshaven beard, wrinkled clothes, eyes red and swollen. "Mom." That was all he could say before falling apart. Literally, he fell to his knees at my door, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood there looking at him, my heart divided. Part of me wanted to help him in, hug him, tell him everything was okay. But another part, the part that was learning to value herself, hesitated. "Michael." My voice came out firmer than I expected. "Why are you here?" "I lost everything," he sobbed. "My job, Vanessa, my apartment, They are going to foreclose on my debt. I have no one. I have nothing." "And what do you want? For me to solve everything again? For me to save you one more time?" He lifted his face, surprised by my coldness. "You are my mother." "Yes, I am. And it was precisely because I am your mother that I did what I did." I crossed my arms. "You aren't here because you want to apologize. You are here because you need something from me, again." "This isn't fair." "Isn't fair?" My voice rose. "You stole the work of innocent people. You damaged careers. You humiliated me. You rejected me. You planned to sue me. And I am not fair?" He remained silent, still on his knees at my door. "If you want to enter this house," I said slowly, "it will have to be with honesty. No excuses, no justifications. You are going to have to admit what you did, not just to me, but to all the people you hurt. And you are going to have to tell me, are you here because you feel genuine remorse, or just because you are desperate?" Michael stayed there, struggling with himself. I could see the internal battle in his eyes. Finally he whispered, "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." It was the first honest answer he had given me in years. I stepped aside. "You can come in. But I am not going to resolve anything for you this time. You created this disaster. You are going to have to clean it up." He walked in unsteadily, sitting in the old armchair in the living room where he grew up. For a long time, we remained in silence. Finally, he began to talk. "I don't know when I became this person," he said, his voice choked. "When I started working, it was so intense. Everyone around me came from rich families, had studied at the best schools, had connections, and I had nothing. Just the name of a father who abandoned us and a mother who was a housekeeper." I felt the sting of the words, but I let him continue. "So, when I saw the opportunity to take a shortcut, to pretend I was better than I really was, I took it. And it worked. People respected me. Vanessa noticed me. Finally, I felt important. And, I asked gently, where did I fit into that new, important life? He closed his eyes. You were a reminder of where I came from, and I was ashamed of that. I was ashamed of you. Tears ran down his face. I am a monster. Vanessa was right when she said that before breaking up with me. She said I was an empty man without character, who was only worth something because of the money. Vanessa was wrong, I said, and he looked at me surprised. You are not empty. You made terrible decisions. You hurt many people, including yourself. But that doesn't mean you are broken beyond repair. How do I fix this? How do I go back? You don't go back, I said honestly. You can't undo what you did. But you can do differently from now on. You can genuinely apologize to the people you hurt. You can work to pay your debts honestly. You can rebuild your character, even if it takes years. And you? His voice was small. Can you forgive me? I sighed, sitting in the chair opposite him. Michael, I already forgave you. I forgave you the moment I made the decision to expose you, because I understood that loving you meant not allowing you to keep destroying yourself and others. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to what we were. Maybe we never will. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not, I nodded. But I don't forgive you because you deserve it. I forgive you because carrying that weight of anger and resentment is hurting me. I forgive you for me, not for you. Michael cried then, really cried. Not manipulative tears or self-pity, but tears of genuine regret. And for the first time in a long time, I felt I was seeing my real son, not the mask he had built. You can stay here tonight, I said finally, but tomorrow you have to start fixing your life. I will help you, but not in the way you are used to. No solving your problems. No making things easy. You are going to have to work for real this time. The following months were the hardest, and paradoxically the most transformative for both of us. Michael slept on my couch for a few weeks while he tried to get back on his feet. It wasn't easy for either of us. I had to constantly resist the urge to fix everything for him, to protect him as I always did. And he had to learn to do basic things he never needed to do. I got him a temporary job at a cleaning company. Yes, cleaning, where I worked all my life. The irony was lost on neither of us. You want me to be a janitor? He asked, incredulous, when I told him about the opening. I want you to understand the value of honest work, I corrected, and to feel in your own skin what I felt all my life. When you clean an executive's office and he doesn't even notice your presence, you will understand how I felt being invisible all my life. Michael took the job, not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. The first few days, he came home exhausted, hands rough, back aching. He complained constantly. How did you do this for 30 years? He asked me one night, collapsing onto the armchair. Because I had something to fight for, I replied. I had you. I had the hope of a better future. Do you have something to fight for now? He fell silent, thinking. I don't know. Then find out, I said. Because without a real purpose, you will go through the same cycle again. You will look for shortcuts, you will want to go back to the easy life, and you won't manage to rebuild yourself for real. Over time, something began to change in Michael. He started talking to the other cleaning staff, listening to their stories. He met Mary, a 40-year-old woman supporting 3 kids alone on a cleaner's wage. He met John, a 55-year-old man who had lost his factory job and was now cleaning to keep his house. And he met Anna, a 20-year-old girl studying at night while working days, dreaming of being a teacher. These people, whom Michael would have completely ignored in his previous life, were now his colleagues. And they had something he never had: dignity in work, pride in supporting their families honestly, and an empathy that comes from real struggle. One night, Michael came home from work with a different shine in his eyes. Mom, today I helped Anna with math. She was having trouble with a college subject, and I remembered the stuff I learned. And you know what was amazing? She was so grateful, so happy, as if I had given her something genuinely valuable. I smiled. You did give. You shared knowledge without expecting anything in return. That is more valuable than any stolen report." He nodded thoughtfully. "I was thinking, when I get back on my feet financially, when things settle, I wanted to do something different. Not go back to the corporate world. Maybe teach? Help people like Anna who are trying to improve their lives?" It was the first time I saw Michael genuinely think about others. Meanwhile, I was changing too. With Michael living with me temporarily, I had to set clear boundaries. I didn't cook for him every day. He had to learn to make his own food. I didn't wash his clothes. He had to take care of himself. And when he tried to fall into old patterns, waiting for me to make everything easy, I firmly said no. It was hard. Every fiber of my being wanted to take care of him, protect him. But I knew if I did that, I would only be repeating the mistakes of the past. Mrs. Gable was my anchor during that period. "You are doing the right thing," she assured me when I doubted. "Helping is different from doing for him. You are helping him grow, not stopping him from falling." 6 months after Michael was fired, we received an unexpected visit. It was Chloe, accompanied by Jessica. "Mrs. Sarah, Michael," Chloe began, visibly nervous. "We came because, well, the company implemented a mentorship program for young professionals. A program to teach professional ethics, real teamwork, things like that. And Richard suggested that Michael could be, well, an example." "An example of what not to do?" Michael asked with a bitter smile. "No," spoke Jessica for the first time. "An example of how to recover when you mess up, of how to accept consequences and rebuild. You lost everything, Michael. And instead of running away or getting worse, you are working honestly, rebuilding your life. That is something young professionals need to see." I looked at my son, seeing the surprise and emotion on his face. "You want me to go there and tell everything?" he asked. "How I stole work? How I was dishonest?" "Yes," Chloe nodded. "And how you are paying for it, how you are learning. Richard believes this can prevent others from doing the same, and it might perhaps open a path for you to eventually return to the market when you prove you have really changed." Michael looked at me, seeking guidance. I just smiled. "It's your decision, son." He accepted. 2 weeks later, I was in the audience at Richard's company auditorium, watching my son on stage. He was visibly nervous, but his voice was steady. "My name is Michael, and I destroyed my own career," he began. "I stole the work of innocent colleagues, lied about my skills, and hurt many people in the process. I am here today not to ask for forgiveness, but to tell the truth. And the truth is that I did all that because I was more worried about appearing successful than actually being successful." He told it all. The plagiarism, the fraud, the firing. But he also told about the after, about working as a cleaner, about learning humility, about discovering that real value doesn't come from titles or salaries. "The most successful person I know," he said, looking at me in the audience, "is my mother. She worked 30 years as a housekeeper. She never had a fancy title, never earned much money, but she has something that took me a long time to understand. She has dignity, and dignity cannot be stolen, bought, or faked. It has to be built through honest choices, day after day." Tears ran down my face. For the first time in years, I felt pride in my son. Not for the fake successes he had achieved before, but for the courage to admit his mistakes publicly. After the talk, several young professionals came to speak with Michael. He answered all questions with brutal honesty. And when a young woman asked if he thought he would ever return to success, he gave an answer that showed how much he had changed. "I don't know if I will ever have a high position or a big salary again," he said. "And honestly, that is no longer what I want. I want to build something real, even if it's small. I want to help people, not use them. And I want to make my mother proud of me, not for my bank account, but for my character." 1 year after that devastating night of my birthday, my life was completely different. Michael no longer lived with me. He had managed to rent a small room near work, but he visited me regularly, not out of obligation or need, but because he wanted to. Our conversations were different now, real. He told me about work challenges, about colleagues, about his dreams of someday opening a small tutoring center for low-income students who wanted to get into college. And I told him about my life too, about the knitting group, about the friends I made, about plans to finally travel a little with the pension I was saving. "You know what's funny?" Michael told me one day over coffee in my kitchen. "When I had everything, the apartment, the car, the high salary, I was miserable. I was constantly anxious, afraid of being discovered, having to maintain a facade. Now, living in a tiny room, working a humble job, I sleep in peace for the first time in years." "It's because now you are honest," I said. "You no longer need to prop up lies." He nodded. "Vanessa called me the other day." "Can you believe it? She called? What did she want?" "Apparently she broke up with her new rich boyfriend and was missing me." He made air quotes with his fingers. "She said she was willing to give me another chance if I got back on the right track. And you?" "I blocked her number," he said simply. "I realized I never loved Vanessa. I loved the idea of her, the status she represented, but not the real person. And she never loved me either. She loved what I could give her." It was a sign of maturity I never thought I'd see in my son. Chloe and Jessica became friends of ours. They visited me occasionally, bringing cakes and chatting about their lives. Chloe had been promoted, Jessica was about to graduate, and both always emphasized that the company's ethics program, started after Michael's case, was making a real difference. "You know, Mrs. Sarah," Jessica told me once, "what your son did was terrible, but what you did, exposing him even though you're his mother, saved many future careers, including mine and Chloe's." Richard also eventually became an unexpected ally. He reached out months after everything, saying he wanted to clear his conscience. "Sarah, for years I used you, underpaid you, overworked you, and in return, you were always loyal. I want to make up for that somehow." He offered to pay me retroactively for that year I worked for free. I accepted, but not for me. I used the money to create a small scholarship fund for children of housekeepers so they could study, in honor of all the women like me who sacrificed everything for their children. Michael was deeply moved when he found out. "Mom, that money was yours. You worked for it. And I am using it in the way that makes me happy," I replied. "I am using it to give other people the opportunities I gave you, but this time with the hope that they will value them more." 2 months ago, something unexpected happened. Michael met Emily, a public school teacher who also worked an extra job at a coffee shop on weekends to supplement her income. She was simple, genuine, and unimpressed by facades. When Michael tried to impress her by telling her about his previous life, she cut him off. "I don't care who you were," she said. "I care who you are now." Michael brought her to meet me, nervous. "Mom, this is Emily. She is important to me." Emily hugged me warmly, without a trace of judgment or superiority. "Mrs. Sarah, Michael told me everything, about his mistakes, about you, about how you had the courage to do the right thing even when it was difficult. You are an inspiration." For the first time, I felt my son was with someone who really saw him. Not the facade, not the potential for money, but the real man, fallible and trying to improve. My 61st birthday was completely different from the previous one. Michael showed up with Emily, bringing a simple cake they made themselves. Mrs. Gable came with the church knitting group. Chloe and Jessica also showed up. It wasn't fancy, there was nothing ostentatious, but when I looked around my small living room, full of people who genuinely cared about each other, I felt rich, richer than any money could make me feel. Michael made a toast. "A year ago, I was at my worst. I had lost everything and was destroyed. And this woman here," he pointed to me, tears in his eyes, "could have rejected me. I deserved it. But she did something harder. She loved me enough not to save me. She loved me enough to let me fall, to let me learn." He turned to me. "Mom, for years I treated you as if you were worth nothing, but the truth is, I was worth nothing. You were always incredible, strong, dignified, hard-working. I was the one too blind to see it. Today, I don't have much to give you. I don't have money, I don't have status, but I have something I never had before. I have character, and I learned that from you." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. "So thank you," he continued. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. and thank you for teaching me, finally, what really matters in life." That night, after everyone left, I sat with Michael on the balcony. It was a clear night, with stars visible, a rarity in the city. "Are you happy now?" I asked him. He thought for a moment. "You know, I'm not sure happiness is the right word. I have peace. I wake up in the morning and I'm not afraid of being discovered, of being exposed. I look in the mirror and recognize the person I see, and I have hope. Real hope in a future built on solid foundations, not on lies." "That is more than happiness," I said. "That is fulfillment." "And you, Mom? Are you happy?" I thought about the question. A year ago, I would have said no. I was alone, abandoned, with a son who was ashamed of me. "But now I am," I replied honestly, "because I discovered that being a mother is part of who I am, but it isn't everything. I am Sarah. I am a woman who survived decades of hard work, who raised a son alone, who had the courage to do the right thing even when it hurt. I am a woman who has friends, hobbies, dreams of her own, and yes, I am still your mother, but now on different terms." Michael held my hand. "Thank you for not giving up." "On yourself, you mean? For not losing yourself completely in me." I squeezed his hand back. "I almost lost myself, but I found out that it is never too late to find yourself again. Today, when I look back, I regret nothing. Not the sacrifices I made for Michael. They came from love, even if misguided, nor for having exposed him. It was the greatest act of love I could do. Because sometimes, loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions. Michael isn't perfect now. He still makes mistakes. He still has hard days. But he is trying, genuinely trying to be a better person. And that is all I ever wanted. As for me, I learned that my worth is not in how much I sacrificed, but in who I am. I learned that setting boundaries is not a lack of love. It is self-love. I learned that being a mother is important, but it is not my only identity. And I learned that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is not our sacrifice, but our courage to let them find their own way. We carry the weight of those we love until our backs break, calling it duty. But real love isn't about how much pain you can endure for someone else. It's about knowing when to stop shielding them from their own reflection. The hardest truth isn't that people change, but that sometimes we have to let them break so they can finally heal themselves. Dignity is the one thing you can't give away, and the one thing you must never let anyone take.